Good evening. My name is Dennis Petrolak. I'm the Superintendent of Schools for the Chester School District. Thank you for joining me tonight for this presentation. If you give me a second, I'd like to bring our presentation up and then we will begin. Tonight, we will be presenting information about our school reopening plans for the upcoming school year. This is the second of 3 public information sessions that have been scheduled. During tonight's information session, we will be reviewing the following topics from our school district reopening plans, which are available for viewing on our website. The first half of the plans will be presented tonight, and those will include sections that deal with health and safety, social emotional well-being, our facilities, the way that we will handle emergency response protocols, and then finally our food meals program dealing with breakfast and lunch, and also transportation. Please note that at the end of this presentation, we will be reviewing a number of questions that have been submitted to the district regarding our plans. We will not be taking live questions during this presentation. We are asking for members of the public to submit any questions that they would like to have addressed at least 24 hours prior to the information session so that we can prepare our responses for your questions. We do have a third information session, and that is scheduled for this Wednesday at 7 p.m. The format will be similar to this meeting, which is that it will be an online meeting. And during that meeting, we'll review the second half of our reopening plans. And those are the sections that focus on teaching and learning, including special education, foreign languages. Those parts of the plan also deal with technology, attendance issues, extracurricular, and also childcare that is made available through the district. In addition to these 3 public sessions, tomorrow night we will be conducting a faculty and staff information session, and that is a closed meeting for faculty and staff only, starting at 7 p.m. I'd like to recognize and thank the following people that are listed on the screen in front of you. These were all members of our reopening committee. And if you look at a listing of the people and the different groups that they represent, you can see that it was a broad range of different stakeholder groups that were represented and participated in development of these plans. In addition to the people that you see listed, there were other individuals in the community from either these same stakeholder groups or additional stakeholder groups who participated in subcommittee meetings. And they were invited to participate at that level of meeting because of a specific expertise that they have in the area. So we do thank all of the members of our reopening committee, plus all of the subcommittee members that are not listed on this screen. To provide you with some context, we are showing you this timeline. And the timeline represents the ongoing efforts of this particular committee. Back in May 15th, while schools were closed, we were already starting to have discussions about what we felt school would look like when it reopened in the fall. At that point, we realized that we needed to bring together a committee with various representatives from different stakeholder groups. So we convened the reopening committee back on May 15th. Since May 15th and through July 29th, we have had ongoing committee meetings and subcommittee meetings. And our goal was to prepare a comprehensive set of school reopening plans that could be submitted to New York State by the deadline of July 31st. Much of the time as we worked, there was evolving information coming out of New York State, both at the Education Department and the Department of Health. And on July 16th, the district and other districts around the state were provided with guidance documents, altogether almost 200 pages of different requirements and recommendations for school districts that came from the education and health departments. So between July 16th and July 31st, the committee and our district administrators were tasked with taking the 200 pages of guidance and formulating our district plans that are very comprehensive in nature. In addition to that, earlier this month, on August 7th, we received additional guidance from the New York State Department of Health, and that has been incorporated into our planning as we're moving forward. So right now, we're in the midst of a series of public information meetings to present the plans. And this past Friday, our principals presented detailed instructional plans to district parents and guardians. And this week, we are in the process of collecting responses from parents and guardians regarding how they would like to have their children participate in school in the upcoming year. So if you're a parent in the district and you have not received a copy of the survey that was emailed out on Friday, then I recommend that you contact your school and speak to someone at the office to let them know that you did not get a survey. But that survey is very important to us in our planning. So we do anticipate that our plans will continue to evolve and will be revised as new information becomes available. And right now, we are looking at September 8th as our first day of school. And I know that our slide says pending Board of Education approval, but that approval came from the board last week. So right now, the first day of school is scheduled for September 8th. Some important things to keep in mind as we go through our plans. Of course, the health and safety of our students and staff and their families is our top priority. So a lot of time and effort and consideration has gone into this plan in ensuring that all of the people that come to learn and work in our schools are safe. Our plan is based on guidelines that were provided to us from the New York State Education Department and also from the Department of Health. And as I said a moment ago, it is expected that these plans will evolve and will continue to change in response to new information that's coming out of the Education Department or the Department of Health. So that's important to remember, that things are subject to change even now. And the other very important point to keep in mind is that it is possible, and there is a lot of discussion among health professionals about the possibility of a second wave, and that possibly occurring when seasonal flu starts to come around in the fall. So all schools have been cautioned to be prepared to have to go to full remote learning if it becomes necessary due to either local conditions, regional conditions, or statewide conditions. So in this slide, once again, this refers to a change in the opening day. So back in February, the district put together its calendar for this upcoming school year. And back in February, we did not know that we would be dealing with coronavirus and the way that it has really impacted so many things in our world. So we realized that we would need some additional days at the beginning of the school year to prepare our faculty and staff for the return of students. So last week, the Board of Education approved a change to the school calendar, moving the first day of classes to September 8th. In the first part of our plan, we are required to identify a district COVID coordinator, and I will be in that position as the district superintendent I will be the person that's responsible for the plans and for carrying out the plans. It's important to remember that this is a living document and that changes are expected based on new information that may become available to us. In the introduction, we talk about the school calendar that I just addressed. We talk about the guiding principles that we used in developing these plans. And we also address a communication plan, how it is that we communicate the plan to the public, specifically that we utilize our school website, school messenger, Twitter, and Facebook to communicate out the plan and any revisions to it. And then also our district reopening committee was an important part of our communication plan in ensuring that we were engaging different stakeholder groups and the community. So because of the dynamic nature of these plans, ongoing communications are going to be very important to make sure that students, parents, and staff members are aware if there are changes to the plans. First part of our plans address health and safety. We list a number of different contact points for parents and guardians, for how to reach key people at our schools, and also how to reach the Department of Health if the need should arise. An important thing to note in terms of new policies, because of the need to minimize traffic in the building, we will be instituting a no visitor policy in the building. And we will also be implementing a daily health screening requirement. And that means that all students, staff, and contractors will be required to participate in a daily health screening. And that daily health screening will be able to assist us in identifying any individuals who may be at risk for contracting COVID or possibly are carriers. So that screening is very important, and I will address that during our question session at the end. Also, we will be conducting daily temperature checks. The district will be installing equipment that will assist us with this process. We will be implementing social distancing of either 6 feet or, in some instances, 12 feet. And those are instances where heavy breathing or exercise or the use of musical instruments, in any instance where somebody would project their voice and potentially project moisture droplets, the social distancing will be 12 feet. Also, face masks will be mandatory for all students, staff, and visitors to the district buildings. We will be reviewing with students hand washing protocols. We will be posting signage in the various bathrooms to remind students of the proper way to wash their hands and maintain good hand washing hygiene. As I said, visitors to the building will be very limited and they will be screened. We will be providing training for all of our staff in implementing these different procedures. The health and safety section addresses the handling of suspected or confirmed COVID cases. It also addresses testing. And I will address these areas in the Q&A at the end of this presentation. The health and safety section also talks about contact tracing, which is how the Department of Health will work with us if we have a positive case to go back and identify any students or staff that may have had contact with the infected individual. And then the health and safety section will also address return to school after illness. In the first half of our reopening plans, we discussed social emotional well-being. And this section of the plan was put together by a subcommittee comprised of our Director of Pupil Personnel Services, Rachel Loftus, And the other members of this subcommittee were our school counselors and our school psychologists. And this section addresses some of the different emotional reactions that teachers and other staff members should expect to see out of our students and possibly out of their colleagues. It addresses what social emotional health is and different things that we can do to promote social emotional health. It addresses what mental health professionals can do in schools. And then it also provides contact information for our SEL resources, both in the school and in the community. The first sections of our reopening plans also address facilities. And you'll see if you take a look at the plans that this is a quite detailed list of the different spaces that we have in our buildings, which extend from office areas to hallways to computer labs and elevators. So each one of those areas is very unique and has its own unique challenges and opportunities. So the plans do address how we need to adjust the physical spaces so that we can maintain social distancing and a safe environment for all of our students and staff. And this section of the plans also addresses ventilation. And I will address that in the Q&A. Also in this section is how our schools will respond to various emergency responses. So specifically, shelter in place. Shelter in place is a procedure that the schools use if there's usually a weather emergency outside. So occasionally we'll get a tornado watch or a tornado warning or a high wind warning or watch. And in those instances, typically what happens is we'll move all the students away from windows. We'll get all of our people usually into an internal hallway or another place that is away from windows and is away from the exterior walls. So our shelter in place adjustments or modifications will include doing all of that, but also maintaining social distancing. A lockout situation is if there's a threat which is outside of the school building. The response for schools is to lock our exterior doors and then to monitor them to make sure that nobody either comes into the building or leaves the building. So in that situation, depending on what the threat is outside, regular activities may carry on or may be suspended. But in a social distance environment, we have to have procedures in place for how we would conduct the lockout if we needed to. And then a lockdown, many people are familiar with. We perform lockdown drills every year, at least 4 times as required by law. And in a lockdown, typically the teacher or staff member will have the students go into a part of the room that is outside of the sight of anybody passing by. And quite often this results in having students go into a very confined space. So in an environment where social distancing is important, that gives us certain challenges with the lockdown. So that is addressed in the plans, how exactly we would deal with that. And then the last emergency response protocol addressed in this section, excuse me, are emergency evacuations, commonly referred to as fire drills. And in a fire drill, all of you will remember, it's what people are told is to move quickly, but do not run, and to quickly get out of the building. And then what we will do is each one of our classes has a designated area that they will go to away from the building to allow emergency vehicles to access the building, but it moves our students and staff safely away from the building. So in that in the context of social distancing, we would have to make sure that those evacuation areas are big enough to accommodate social distancing of the people that were moving there. The first half of our reopening plans also addresses our breakfast and lunch program. And some of the important points in our meal service is that we will be providing meals for students that are both getting their instruction in person here in school, and also for students that are learning remotely and are not coming into school. As always, all of our meal services will comply with the USDA requirements. And an important point is that when the close down or the shutdown of schools occurred back in March, the district and other districts in the state provided meals free of charge to students. And this will no longer be the case. So parents and guardians will have to make sure that they have a My School Bucks account and that they're funding that account so that their children can purchase meals. And we do strongly recommend that parents utilize this touchless system so that we're not dealing with the handling of money. It just works a lot better for everybody. And then the last bullet here addresses the fact that we will continue to have available, as all schools do, free and reduced meals for families that qualify. And information about that will be posted on our website and will be shared to the community in a number of different ways. So lunch for in-person students is going to be handled in the classroom. Our students will be traveling in cohorts. Those cohorts or small groupings will be typically 11 or 12 students. And students will stay with that same group for the entirety of the time that they're here in person. So the plan for lunch will include having students eat lunch in the classroom. Lunches and breakfast will be either delivered to the classrooms or made available in kiosks that we'll have in various parts of the building. Those students that are on remote instruction, we're asking that parents contact the school in advance and let them know that they would like to participate in the program while their children are on remote learning. And then we will make arrangements for meals to be picked up. And again, we very strongly encourage parents to utilize My School Bucks as the preferred method for payment. But we can also, cash is always accepted, and personal checks work as well. The next section is transportation. And from the New York State guidance, we are reminded that social distancing is required. However, the New York State guidance recognizes the challenges that social distancing provides for transportation. So they do allow for us to have other methods in place or other precautions in place if social distancing is not possible. And it's quite likely that it will not be possible on buses. So the wearing of face masks on the buses will be required and will be strictly enforced. And that is within the guidance of New York State and also the Department of Health. At this time, we do not know how many students will be riding our buses. We know and we're hearing that a lot of parents intend to drive their children to school. And so it's difficult to say at this time how well we will be able to socially distance. But parents and guardians may want to consider walking or driving their children. And we will be asking parents to let us know what their intentions are in the survey that we have out this week. And we are asking for parents to turn in that survey by Wednesday afternoon. We realize that there is another presentation on Wednesday night. Some parents may want to see that presentation before they make their decision. And if that's the case, then we ask that parents turn in their survey the following day. So again, going through the timeline, as I said, we are in the midst of our public presentations, and we're also in the midst of that parent survey. That parent survey is very important to us so that we can know the size of our classes and the space requirements that we'll need so that we can make arrangements for transportation and the routing of buses. We know parents are always very eager to have the information about their child's bus route. So all of that information is critical to parents and especially to the school in terms of us doing our planning. So we do ask that parents complete that survey by Wednesday or Thursday at the latest, so that we can fine tune our plans to get ready for the opening of school on September 8th. As I said, there will be another public information session. That session will be on Wednesday at 7 p.m. That will also be an online meeting. And once again, you'll see the different sections that will be presented that deal with our instructional program, technology, and extracurricular athletics. We will be conducting the faculty and staff information session tomorrow night. And at this point, what I'd like to do is to go over some of the questions that have been submitted previously. And these questions are available on the frequently asked questions page on the district website. So the first set of questions go to health and safety. And the first question is, most districts in the county are not having students right back in schools right away. So the question is, why did Chester decide to bring students back? And the response is that every district is unique and has its own challenges and its own opportunities. Chester is a relatively small district, so we have a lot of flexibility. And fortunately, we have a lot of space. And one of the things that you need in order to be able to socially distance classes is you need the space to spread them out. So fortunately, we were able to find the space in both buildings, in some instances using spaces that have not previously been used for classes. But we have been able to create enough learning spaces for all of our classes, and all of the class sizes are small enough that students will get plenty of individualized attention, and they will be socially distanced. So that addresses how we were able to make the decision about opening up in September, where other districts are opening up in full remote. Next question is, what procedures are in place to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in the school? And there are many different steps that the district has taken and will be taking. And I do encourage you to take a look at the detailed plans. If you look at pages 8 to 20 in our plans, you will find a listing of all the different things that we will be doing and have done in our schools to make sure that we are in compliance with health department requirements and state education department requirements. As I said, it's quite lengthy, so please check out the plans, page 8 to 20. Next question is, will parents be required to perform health screenings every day? And the answer is yes. New York State does require that parents participate in a health screening of their children every day. At this time, we are looking at a number of different platforms that we may use in order for parents to conduct the screening and communicate that information. But regardless of the platform that we settle on, parents will be expected to answer a few basic questions, such as, do you, if you're a visitor, or does your child have a fever of over 100 degrees? Do you feel sick? Does your child, has your child tested positive for COVID, or had anyone been exposed to anyone who has? And have you, if you're a visitor, or has your child traveled to one of the states or territories on the New York State travel restriction? So as I said, there will be a platform to be determined at this time that parents will be required to utilize so that you can conduct that screening and communicate that to the school, so that the school will know that that screening that has been completed. The next question deals with masks. Will masks be required for the entire school day? And the answer is yes. Masks will be required for all students, for all staff, and for all visitors to the district. And I used the term visitors a few times. When I'm saying visitors, I mean contractors or other approved personnel. But remember, we do have a no visitor policy. But everyone will be required to wear a mask. Students will be given mask breaks at various times throughout the day. And teachers will be very sensitive to the fact that that students will need a break from wearing their mask occasionally. The next question I'm pulling out is, will the nurse's office have rapid COVID-19 tests available? And the answer is no, that as of today, schools do not and will not be conducting COVID testing. There are other resources in the community, other places where people can go for COVID testing. And in fact, our district has a listing of those places. And if you're interested in seeing that, I suggest that you go to our website and you could download a list that was provided by the County Department of Health just last week. The next question is, will each school have a school nurse every day? And the response is that both of our schools have full-time nurses. And occasionally, just like anyone else, our school nurses may need to be absent. And we are fortunate in that we do have a number of substitute nurses that we've used over the years. They're familiar with our students and staff and our schools. And they are usually readily available to come in when needed. There are some times when a substitute nurse may not be available. And when that occurs, then what we do is one nurse will cover both buildings. But as I said, it is very rare for that kind of thing to happen. And hopefully that will continue to be the case. The next question is, how are you going to treat a child with a cold? Do they have to stay home? And will they get the same information that they would if they were in school? So it's very important that all parents and guardians take this very seriously. And that is that it's the strong recommendation of the Department of Health that anyone who is feeling ill not come to school. And we are no longer talking about a benign illness. We're dealing with a serious health threat. And it's very important that parents and guardians and others understand that and take the first precaution, which is to keep your child or yourself home if you're feeling sick. So we do have a listing of some of the symptoms of COVID, and that is available. There's a link on in the response to this particular question on our FAQs. The next question is, what if a student or staff member tests positive for COVID? Will schools be closed? And there are a number of related questions that go to this. So what I'd like to do is kind of combine them together, and I'll address the related issues. So the question is, what happens if somebody is in school and then they start demonstrating symptoms? What would happen is the individual, if it's a staff member, should contact the school nurse, and either the school nurse will go to them or will direct them to come to the nurse. If it's a student, the teacher will contact the nurse and inform the nurse that there's a student who's demonstrating symptoms. And then arrangements will be made to get the student to the nurse's office. Once at the nurse's office, a nurse will evaluate the individual, and if the individual is demonstrating symptoms of coronavirus, then that individual will be directed to an isolation room and will be kept in isolation until either that individual can leave or is picked up. So in the case of a student that becomes ill, we will contact the parent right away. We will ask them to come in as quickly as possible to pick up their child. And then when the parent arrives, the child will be brought to the parent outside of the building, because remember, we're not permitting visitors to the building. The nurse will speak with the parent or the guardian, and the nurse will give instructions to the parent about what to do. And the recommendations and the instructions will be to contact your primary care physician and to inform the physician about the symptoms, and then to follow the recommendations of your family doctor. And if the symptoms suggest that the individual should go for testing, we will provide information about where testing is available. And if testing is performed, and for anyone who is sent home sick, ultimately we will need a note from a doctor clearing the individual and allowing them to return to work or school. So that is if somebody becomes symptomatic while in the building. So the other question was, well, what if somebody is positive? The question is, how would we respond to that? Would the class have to quarantine? Would people know that somebody has tested positive? And it's important to understand that every situation is going to be very different. That if we get a notification from the Department of Health that somebody is positive, then the Department of Health will decide what needs to happen. They will consult with us. They will do contact tracing. They will determine the extent of the exposure and other people that may have been exposed, and then they will make the recommendation or give us the direction about what needs to do. And as I said, every situation is very unique. So if the student, if it's at the beginning of the day and the student just came into school, and then we may be able to say that that student only was exposed to a limited number of people, and the quarantine may be restricted just to that small number of people. But if it's a situation where perhaps the student was here for a good portion of the day, visited a number of different places in the building, although we are limiting movement around the building, had exposure to a lot of people, then the quarantine could be much larger. So the quarantine is going to be determined by the facts, who the person was exposed to, and how that person was exposed to other people. And again, that's a call that will be made by the Department of Health working with the school. So to answer the question about whether there will be a notification if somebody tests positive, the answer is that if there is a positive case, there will be a notification, but we will not be able to tell you who the individual is that tested positive. And that is a matter of health privacy. It's privileged information under HIPAA. So we will not be able to give you a name of a person, but we will be able to notify you that there has been a positive case. Just going through similar questions. So there are a number of similar questions related to will the entire class have to quarantine? As I said, it's going to be really a case-by-case basis. So the other question in the health and safety area, my child falls into a high-risk category of persons susceptible to the virus. Will there be special accommodations for students like my son, who, if they get sick, can have very detrimental consequences? So without getting into specifics, every situation is different and unique. And if your child is in a high risk category, then please make sure that the school nurse is aware of that if she is not already. And we will work with you and we'll work with your doctor to see if those needs can be accommodated in our school environment. And ultimately, if the needs are so great that they cannot be reasonably accommodated, then remote instruction might be the better alternative for a student. But I want to emphasize this is very unique. It's different for every student and is something that we need to look at the details and that are specific to each child or each person. The last question that I have in the health and safety area is, will the school have proper ventilation filters? And as you know, we have 2 buildings in the district. Well, 2 that are actively being used for students, the elementary school and Chester Academy. Chester Academy, as you know, is a much more modern building, built about 16 years ago. And we do have a more advanced HVAC system. And Chester Academy is able to accommodate and use the MERV 13 filters that are recommended for filtering out larger particulates. Chester Elementary School was built many years ago, and although we do have a good HVAC system in there, in that building, and it's well maintained, it is not able to accommodate that level of filtration. So we do not have the MERV 13 in the elementary school. So the ventilation plan at the elementary school is to adjust the system to introduce as much outside air as possible. And by the way, this is consistent with many schools around the state and around the country that are of the same age of Chester Elementary School. And in all those buildings, the recommendations are the same. Introduce as much outside air into the system, and then increase your maintenance schedule so that you are ensuring that your filters that are in use are clean and at their peak level of effectiveness. Moving on to the next section. The next section deals with daily procedures. So just a couple questions in this particular area. And there are others on the FAQs, which I encourage you to take a look at. I just cherry-picked a number of questions that I thought were most relevant to the sections of the plan that we discussed tonight. So the first question is, will students in Chester Academy be using their lockers for their books and personal items? And then the second question is kind of related. It's, will coats and book bags be placed on the back of children's chairs instead of hanging all together, which is really an elementary school question. So the answers are that Chester Academy, the lockers are being closed off. The lockers are very close to one another, and having people use the lockers would put people into very close contact with one another, which of course is not recommended. And then in addition, since students will not be traveling from class to class, they can have their belongings with them for the entirety of the time that they're in school. So at the academy, students will be permitted to use their backpacks, bring their backpacks to class, and keep them with them at all times. At the elementary school, every room is a little different. Some of the rooms are equipped with cubbies, and the cubbies are enclosed spaces So we will make sure that the cubbies that are being used are separated or distanced from one another. But those areas that have cubbies and enable for that distancing will be used. And in some classrooms where cubbies may not be available, then other spaces will be used for personal property. And in some instances, the backs of chairs may be used. Moving on, there are a number of questions, a small number, that deal with transportation. The first one is, will there be an organized procedure for dropping students off in the morning? And also for those who are not taking, for those that are not taking the bus. So this is something that the principals in both buildings have been planning for some time. There will be separate areas and separate times for drop-offs, parent drop-offs, and also for the bus arrivals and departure. So you will be getting that information in more detail when we get closer to the beginning of the school year. But yes, that is something that has been carefully considered, and there will be staggered drop-offs. So more information coming from the elementary schools. The next question is, how is busing going to work? How many students will be on the bus and on seats? And as I said, this is something that we really can't answer at the moment because we don't know how many students will be selecting remote learning. But we are planning for the possibility that we will have a good number of riders on the buses, and are reminding parents and guardians that if we can social distance on the bus, we will. But there is a possibility that we won't be able to. So the wearing of masks is going to be very important to the safety of everyone on the buses, and is mandatory. And by the way, our bus drivers will have additional masks, so that if a child comes to the bus stop and forgets their mask, or if the mask breaks, no student will be turned away from the bus because they don't have a mask. So again, I encourage all parents to complete the survey, which will help us to get the information that we know to make the proper arrangements. There are a couple questions regarding social emotional well-being that I'd like to throw out there. What will teachers be doing to ensure students have a good introduction to their new teachers and classmates, whether they're in a hybrid or in a fully remote? And the response is that the social and emotional needs of our students is our primary concern. We know how important it is for our students to make connections with teachers and with their neighbors. We know that children can't learn if they are not comfortable, and our teachers will work very hard to make sure that your children are safe and are comfortable in whatever environment they're in, whether they are in person here with us, whether they are at home on remote learning. And if you feel that your child is not being engaged, and I suggest that you contact your building principal and let us know if you feel that we could be doing a better job with that. But that is very important to us, and our counselors or administrators, that's of primary importance to us, is making sure everybody is comfortable and feels safe so that they can learn and have a good experience here. The next question in this area, there's a question, will students have recess? And I place this into the section of social and emotional well-being because school is where our children come to learn, but it's also a place where they learn about socialization and getting along with other people, and recess is an important component of that. Children need exercise. Children need an opportunity to go out and burn off some of their energy and have fun. So yes, the children in the elementary school will have a recess period on a daily basis, and they will also have physical education on every other day. We will be identifying different areas for recess so that students will be remaining with their same cohorts or their same groupings. They will not be allowed to interact with other groups but within their cohorts, they will have an opportunity to go out and get some exercise and play. And the next question is related to that. It's, will children be able to socialize at all? And again, we understand how important it is for children to develop socially, emotionally, physically. And yes, they will have an opportunity to socialize, but while maintaining social distancing and also other precautions that we have to put in place. Excuse me. The next question addresses meals. Will there be hot lunches or just sandwiches available for lunch? And the answer is that in the beginning of the school year, for the first week or so, no longer than a week, we probably will not be providing hot meals. And the reason for that is that we will be working through identifying how many meals we will need. So we will be providing meals for breakfast and lunch, but they will most likely be sandwiches. We are working on the menu right now. But for the first week, as we're trying to determine what the level of participation is, hot meals will not be available. But we do anticipate that during the second week, hot meals will be available every day. And if you want more details, you can take a look at our plans. Pages 27 to 28 address school meals. And then there are a couple questions that deal with parent choice or parent or guardian choice. Do parents, guardians have a choice of not sending their children to school in the fall? Well, the answer is no and yes. So in New York State, in general, all children between 5 and 18 are required to attend school on a regular basis. That's compulsory education law. But in the present conditions, we are providing options for parents. And one option is sending your child in for in-person learning. And we are also providing parents the opportunity of having their children participate in remote learning. So parents will have a choice of whether they want their children in the building or learning remotely at home. The next question is, if parents are in fact being asked to stick with their choice for 5 weeks, and choice being whether in-person or remote learning, and if after 5 weeks, can they switch to the other type of learning if they choose to? So the answer is yes. We are asking parents to make a 5-week commitment. That will allow us to plan accordingly so that we can ensure that the physical layouts meet the needs of our groups, so that our teachers can do their lesson planning appropriately, whether it's for in-person or remote learning students. So we are asking for parents to give very careful thought and to making a decision about how they want their children to be instructed, and then to stick with that decision for 5 weeks. If parents are interested in making a change, we are asking that parents contact the building principal, have a discussion with the building principal in advance of when they would like to see that change take place. This way, the principals can understand any issues that the parents may be experiencing that are causing the reason for the change. And also the administrators will have an opportunity to make the necessary adjustments to schedules and classrooms and buses, etc. So those are a sampling of some of the questions that we took from our frequently asked questions page on our website. Those questions pertain to different items and different areas that I presented tonight. My PowerPoint is stalled right now. Bear with me, please. Okay. So that concludes our presentation. As I said, we will have another presentation on Wednesday at 7 p.m. That will also be an online presentation. We will not be taking live questions. We are asking that you submit any questions to our website. You can also submit them directly to your building principals. I'd like to thank you for your attention tonight. And if at any point you have any questions or any concerns, please feel free to contact your building principals or contact me. Thank you and have a good evening.